Welcome back to Dieu Han RV, where untold stories echo louder than silence. Before we begin, I wish you peace, strength, and courage. Life has a way of testing hearts when they're finally healing. Today, Dieu Han faces a moment she never thought she'd live through. A glimpse that pierced deeper than betrayal. It wasn't just a man hugging another. It was a crack in the picture she dared to believe in. What truth lies behind that embrace? Dieu Han stood frozen. Her heart raced, not from love, but confusion. The man she trusted, the man who once looked at her like she was the center of his world, was now lying on the grass, arms wrapped around someone else. Her mind spiraled. Had she misunderstood everything? Was she just a passing chapter in his story? The sunlight seemed bright, almost mocking her clarity. She felt betrayed, not because of the hug, but because of what it might mean. Then noticed her delayed. His body stiffened, but it was then who jumped up first, startled and blushing. The air turned thick with silence. Dieu Han's eyes darted between them, trying to make sense of what she saw. No one spoke. Trin adjusted his shirt awkwardly, while Then looked down, avoiding her gaze. It was as if the truth had been caught red-handed. But what truth? Dieu Han didn't know what hurt more, the silence or the unknown behind it. Then tried to explain. He said Trin was just being dramatic, trying to impress people. But the words felt empty. Dieu Han listened, but part of her mind wandered. Why did Then freeze like that? Why the awkwardness? Why no denial? She wanted to believe him, but doubt had already made a home in her heart. Was she overthinking, or had she just glimpsed something bigger? She smiled weakly, nodding, though inside, storms were gathering. As Dieu Han turned away, the question still echoed in her mind. Behind her, Then stood frozen, unsure what to say next. Whatever truth lay beneath, it would take more than words to fix this. If you feel the tension in their story, if you've ever faced uncertainty in love, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon. Because sometimes, the calmest moments hide the deepest storms, and this story is far from over. Then stepped closer, trying to explain. His voice was calm, but his eyes flickered with unease. He said Trin was joking, that it meant nothing. But Dieu Han didn't look convinced. Her arms crossed, her silence louder than any word. She stared at the grass where they had been lying. Her mind replayed the embrace again and again. Then's explanation felt rehearsed. Not a lie, but not the truth either. The more he spoke, the more her doubt deepened. Dieu Han finally spoke, her voice cool and distant. She asked simple questions, but her tone cut deep. Why was Trin there? Why were they so close? Why didn't Then push him away? Then fumbled for words, saying it all happened so fast. But Dieu Han's expression stayed unreadable. She wasn't angry, not yet, but she was shaken. Something felt off. And in that silence between answers, she realized she wasn't just jealous. She was starting to question who Then really was.
Fan tried again, this time softer, almost pleading. He said he never meant to hurt her. But Dieu Han took a step back, her eyes still guarded. Something between them had shifted. It wasn't just about Trin, it was about trust. About the gap that suddenly opened. Fan looked vulnerable, as if afraid to lose her. But Dieu Han didn't move. She needed time, space, answers. And maybe, just maybe, she wasn't ready to hear them today.
Dieu Han stood at the edge of the yard, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up fallen clothes from the line. She tried to focus, tried to silence the images stuck in her mind. Her lips pressed tight, pretending calmness, yet something inside her had already begun to burn. She kept her back to Then, hiding the storm rising in her chest. She didn't want him to see it. Not yet. Not when she didn't even understand what it meant herself. The sound of laughter from the yard reached her ears again. Dieu Han pretended to adjust the basket in her hands, but her heart was pacing. Was she imagining too much? She told herself she had no right to care, yet she did. Deep down, she wished she hadn't seen it. That brief, awkward hug, that odd closeness. She glanced back quickly, then looked away just as fast. The jealousy came quietly, like a breeze that carried the scent of something lost. She remembered how Than had once cared for her with gentle eyes and quiet acts of kindness. Was that the same man she saw earlier? Her fingers dug slightly into the basket's handle. No, she didn't want to judge too quickly. But Denise was there, clawing at her thoughts. She inhaled deeply and kept her movements steady, determined not to break the fragile stillness of the moment. She wouldn't confront him, not yet. But she would not forget the image either. She wanted to ask then what that was. Who that person was. But Dieu Han knew her voice would betray her if she spoke now. Her pride kept her still, her questions trapped beneath the surface. She told herself not to feel too much, not to assume. But the heart rarely listens to reason. And hers was already trembling at something she couldn't yet explain. The breeze touched her skin but couldn't cool the burning doubt. Dieu Han's eyes watched the garden below, pretending to admire the flowers. But in truth, she was scanning for signs. Signs that would ease her fear or confirm it. Her gaze landed on Than again. Still smiling. Still unaware. She sighed softly. Whatever was blooming between them now, something else had started to wilt in her heart. Trin slowly walked across the yard, pretending to brush dust off his shirt. His eyes never left Than, who was now standing beside a half-carved wooden beam. Without warning, Trin stepped closer, his hands reaching forward in a gesture that felt too familiar. Than instinctively leaned back, startled. Trin smiled nervously, as if hoping the world would pause just long enough for this moment to feel normal. But Than's eyes had already filled with confusion and a growing discomfort. Trin didn't give up. With a light laugh, he said something about the heat and friendship, then moved in a coffee, this time more deliberately. His arms wrapped halfway around Than before the other men raised a hand between them. Than's voice was firm but not harsh. It held a quiet boundary. Trin's expression cracked slightly, as if caught between shame and longing. The moment stretched awkwardly between them, the quiet of the garden only making every second feel louder. Than stepped back, adjusting the piece of wood as an excuse to avoid further contact. He didn't want to embarrass Trin, but he couldn't pretend either. Trin stood silently, clutching the hem of his shirt, lips pressed tight. There was something desperate in his stance, yet Than's gaze was firm. This wasn't the connection Trin had hoped for. The breeze blew gently between them, but the air had already thickened with tension. Than quietly wiped his hands and placed the chisel back on the wooden box. Without saying much, he looked briefly at Dieu Han, then at Trin, and gave a polite nod. Something in his eyes hinted at tiredness, not of the body, but of emotion. He turned, walking toward the shed, leaving behind the two. Dieu Han didn't speak, but her gaze followed him closely. Trin shifted awkwardly beside her, clearly unsure how to fill the silence that had just arrived. The sound of Than's footsteps faded behind the trees, swallowed by the chirping cicadas. Dieu Han took a deep breath, still unsure of what she had seen earlier. Trin cleared his throat and tried to smile, as if wanting to break the heavy silence. But Dieu Han's expression remained distant and readable. There was tension in the air, one that even the warmth of the sun couldn't burn away. Between them stood a question neither dared to ask, but both quietly feared. Trin suddenly reached into a fabric bag and pulled out a neatly folded white dress. He handed it to Dieu Han with a playful grin, saying it was a gift from Mrs. Hoan. Dieu Han blinked in surprise, unsure of what to say. Trin insisted that she try it on so they could send a photo to thank the woman who had helped her so much. Though hesitant, Dieu Han eventually took the dress and walked toward her room in silence. In the quiet of her room, Dieu Han held the dress up to the light. It shimmered slightly, the fabric soft between her fingers. A strange mix of emotions rose in her chest, memories, insecurity, and something she couldn't name. She hadn't worn something like this in a long time. Yet, for some reason, she slipped into it slowly, careful with each movement, as if honoring something sacred. Her reflection in the mirror made her pause and breathe in sharply. She stepped outside, the soft hem of the dress catching the wind slightly. Trin's eyes lit up the moment he saw her, but he masked it with a forced smirk. He raised his phone, saying they had to hurry and take the picture. Dieu Han gave a shy smile, still uncertain about all this. The sunlight painted her in gold, making her look serene, almost otherworldly. But Trin's silence after snapping the photo held something off, something slightly bitter. They took a few more pictures near the garden wall, Trin guiding her poses like a photographer. Dieu Han tried to follow, though awkward at times. Trin's compliments were vague, half-hearted. Something in his tone felt strange, like he was measuring her, not admiring. When they finished, he looked at the photos with a sigh and mumbled that they would have to redo them later. Dieu Han tilted her head slightly, sensing something odd, but said nothing. Trying to recover, Dieu Han smiled faintly and offered to take a few more pictures. Trin nodded, but his tone had changed. Now he commented on her posture, her arms, even the way she smiled. Nothing seemed to satisfy him. It was no longer about the dress, it was something deeper, something unspoken. Dieu Han tried to stay calm, but a subtle tension crept up her spine. She began to wonder if this was truly about Mrs. Han RV. Trin scrolled through the photos with a critical eye, sighing often. He said maybe they should have picked a darker dress. He even offered to bring her makeup next time. His suggestions sounded helpful, but they carried a strange edge, as if he were trying to reshape her. Dieu Han's smile faded slightly. There was a heaviness in her chest, something she couldn't name. She nodded, but deep down, she began to feel like she was slowly being erased. The last photo was of her looking away, when catching the dress. Trin stared at it longer than the others, then turned off the screen. He said it would have to do for now. Dieu Han nodded again, her hands gently brushing the dress fabric. The silence between them stretched uncomfortably. A part of her wanted to change back into her old clothes. She no longer felt like herself in this borrowed light. Something about this moment felt rehearsed, not real. Just as Dieu Han turned to head inside, Trin stepped forward and reached out, gripping the fabric of the white dress. His voice dropped low, almost calm. "I think I'll take the dress back," he said. Dieu Han blinked, unsure if she heard correctly. Trin smiled faintly, but his eyes carried something sharp. "You wore it nicely, but it was never yours." Dieu Han froze, the breeze catching her hair as her hands slowly let go of the hem. Trin folded the dress slowly, almost ceremoniously, then held it close to his chest. His next words came out with a sugary tone, laced with poison. "Just a little advice, Dieu Han. You might want to be careful. Don't make the mistake of getting in the way of something that was never yours to begin with." Dieu Han looked at him, her brows furrowing. Trin's smile widened. "You see, love doesn't always look the way people expect it to." Dieu Han's chest tightened. She stood still, trying to read the meaning behind Trin's words. But he didn't wait. He turned around, white dress in hand, and walked away as if he'd just won something. Dieu Han watched his back disappear through the garden path, her thoughts spiraling. The air felt heavier now, filled with something unspoken. She didn't fully understand what had just happened, but one thing was certain, Trin had drawn a line. And it felt far from over. Dieu Han turned back toward the house, her steps slower than before. She couldn't shake off Trin's final words. The tone wasn't just possessive, it was a threat. A warning wrapped in silk. She stared at the front door, unsure whether to walk in or retreat. Had she misread everything about them? Or was she now caught in something far more complicated? The camera lingers on her uncertain expression, and before fading to black, a voice whispers, "Be careful who's watching." She came here for peace. For healing. But what Dieu Han just witnessed tore open a wound she didn't know still bled. Was it love that betrayed her, or something even darker waiting in the shadows? Her heart stands on a trembling line, between hope and fear. What happens next may break her, or set her free. If you're still holding your breath like we are, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. The truth is just beginning to unravel.